Okay, Catherine the Great of Russia. She was born as Sophie von Anhalt-Zerbst. She is the daughter of an obscure German prince, Christian August von Anhalt-Zerbst, and Joanna Elizabeth of the Holstein-Gottorp family. She grew up as a minor German princess through her father's lineage, but it was her mother's Holstein-Gottorp bloodlines that gave her and her sisters profitable marriage proposals. They lived in Prussia, modern-day Poland, where her father was stationed as a member of the King of Prussia's military. Her family was noble, but they were not wealthy. She was engaged to Peter of Russia in 1774 when she was 15 years old, after being invited to Russia in 1744 by Empress Elizabeth of Russia, who was the daughter of Peter the Great and had taken his throne in a coup after his death. And after Catherine and Peter were married on August 21st, 1745. She converted to Orthodox Christianity, and that is when she changed her name from Sophie to Catherine. It was not a very happy marriage, and through her memoirs and pamphlets that she wrote, it was said that Peter was neurotic and rebellious and could be cruel to her. They had been married for 8 years, but they still had not had any children, and suspicions grew that Peter was either infertile or the marriage had never been consummated in the first place. Because of their unhappy marriage, both Peter and Catherine had had multiple affairs, but Catherine's were under more scrutiny because it put the legitimacy of her children into question. So, life in Russia. Catherine was overall adored by the Russian people when she first became a princess. She was very devoted to the nation and became fluent in Russian and practiced her adopted Orthodox religion, which is something Peter did not do. Peter loved his native country and supported Prussia, which is Russia's longtime foe, and he worshipped King Frederick the Great of Prussia. Catherine spent most of her time reading and took great interest in the Enlightenment and authors such as Voltaire. Empress Elizabeth died in January of 1762, making 33-year-old Peter III Emperor of all Russia. He was a slightly controversial emperor, especially when he withdrew from the 7 Years' War. This alienated and angered much of Russia's military and nobility because he was showing, again, support of Prussia, who they were mainly fighting in this war. Even though it was controversial, he did pass laws that did better many lives in Russia. He passed religious freedom for all Russians, which greatly angered the Orthodox Church. He also made the killing of serfs illegal. Serfs were people who were viewed more as property than people, and he outlawed the secret police. So this is how Catherine the Great came to power, the coup. And while Peter III was away in Finland, Catherine was gaining support in St. Petersburg. Catherine had been convinced mostly through rumors that Peter was going to divorce her. So on July 8th, one of Catherine's supporters was arrested. This sprang her into action, and that's when she gained the support of the military and had her husband, Peter III, arrested. After gaining support of the military and mobilizing, Catherine had the Russian Church crown her as the sole ruler of Russia. Peter had ruled for only 186 days, which is just a little bit over 6 months. Peter III died on July 17th after being exiled out of St. Petersburg. It is unknown if Catherine plotted his death or if this was a surprise to her as well, but it did kind of stain the beginning of her rule, with people thinking she might have murdered her husband. and it did lead to later uprisings. So, in the beginning of her reign, Catherine knew that Russia needed to reform, but she needed the nobility's support to strengthen the state and institute these reforms. In order to get the nobility's support, Catherine protected and gave more power to the elite in Russia in return for their loyalty to her. Her main reforms were expanding the state and continuing the process of westernization that was started by Peter the Great. During her reign, she extended the Russian Empire southwards and westwards, adding territories which included Crimea, Belarus, and Lithuania. Agreements with Prussia and Austria led to 3 partitions of Poland in 1772, 1793, and 1775, extending Russia's borders well into Central Europe. Catherine also improved Russia's education system and promoted an appreciation of the arts. Catherine created a stable Russian state. She restored the state treasury, and that was kind of her most practical problem to tackle, because the treasury was empty when Empress Elizabeth died. She restored it in 1762 by secularizing the property of the clergy, who owned 1/3 of the land, and serfs in Russia. Again, serfs were seen as property, not real people. The Russian clergy was then reduced to a group of state-paid functionaries. In 1767, Catherine had delegates from all social classes, except serfs, and all provinces meet to create a constitution. Debates went on for months, trying to form this new constitution, and Catherine really wanted to see what all of her people, except for serfs, again, wanted out of her reign and what was most important to the Russian people, but ultimately nothing came of the proposed constitution, as it was found to be too progressive and liberal. And then we come to the rebellions. Catherine had multiple rebellions throughout her reign, but Pugachev's rebellion is the most formidable, I would say. So it took place from 1774 to 1775. Peasant and Cossack troops prepared to march on Moscow in 1777. The Russian army crushed the rebellion, march on Moscow in 1774, and the army crushed the rebellion in 1775. And this started because Pugachev, who was once kind of working with Catherine almost, claimed to be Peter III, who had not died in his alleged assassination attempt and was coming back for his rightful throne. But eventually Pugachev was captured and beheaded. So later in life, culture and education were Catherine's primary passions. She read extensively and corresponded with many of the leading intellectuals of the day, such as Diderot and Voltaire. She accumulated an art collection that currently serves as the foundation for the Hermitage Museum, and was a supporter of literature, the arts, and education. Paul, Catherine's son, succeeded her after she passed away in St. Petersburg on November 17th, 1796. And although there were rumors about how Catherine had died, it was found that they were all just fueled by her enemies, and she likely passed of a heart attack or a stroke in her sleep. And although it appears that Catherine truly believed in enlightenment, the ideals of justice and equality were more intellectual than practical for her, given her support for the aristocracy and the over 500,000 serfs she personally owned. Serfs had very limited rights and were viewed as property to be exchanged and utilized for the gain of a select few, as demonstrated by the fact that she gave them away to powerful officials and court favorites. Despite the general success of her rule, Catherine did reinforce a hierarchical structure that was based mostly on a person's birth rank.